Well, hello, everybody. My name is Andrea Merida. I am the co-chair of the Green Party of Colorado, and we're making this interview available today because our state presidential nomination meeting is coming up on April 3rd. And so we thought it would make sense to offer some information to every one of our Colorado Greens, some background on the five candidates that will be asking for our delegate selection nomination. Today we have with us Darryl Cherney. He's a Californian and an all-around good guy. Darryl, you'll let me rib you a little bit because in Colorado we're a little sensitive about Californians moving to Colorado.
Oh
but
goodness.
but Darryl, he does hail from the Redwood region of Northern California. He has been very instrumental and very active in Earth First as an organizer, and he says he's a troubadour as well, and you'll see that in a little bit. He's also a film producer who produced the film Who Bombed Judy Berry in 2012, which had to do with some of the repercussions against some of the Earth First activists, and he can tell us a little bit about that as well sooner or later here. He's also a former elected official in California, having been on a health board, and will elucidate on that as well on the healthcare board. And he's got a lot of experience in the Green Party. He's been a Green for a very, very long time and well known to folks who are active in the national level of politics. So I'm going to go ahead and let Darryl say hello to you, tell you a few things about himself, what brought him to this point, and things green in general. Darryl, kick it away.
Thank you so much, Andrea. My name is Darryl Cherney. I've been an environmental organizer for the last 30 years. I've been a political activist since I was 8 years old, so that makes it 52 years. I've always cared a lot about politics. I started off in politics by being neighbors and then an employee of the legendary Tony Schwartz, not the one who works with Donald Trump, but the late Tony Schwartz, who did the famous Daisy commercial for Lyndon Johnson, but also did 5 presidential ads. And I worked for him as a child actor between the years of 1961 and 1969, where I really got my original preliminary political education. And I worked on the Headwaters Forest Campaign. I am co-founder of the Headwaters Forest Campaign. It was a 13-year campaign that resulted in the protection of the Headwaters Forest Reserve, a national reserve here in outside of Eureka, California. I also, during that campaign, Judy Berry and I co-founded Redwood Summer, which was designed and did, in fact, bring thousands of college kids and other activists up to Northern California to protest for the Redwoods. It was based on Freedom Summer in Mississippi and the Deep South, where the civil rights workers realized that as long as the rest of the nation wasn't watching, that the bigotry, the Jim Crow, the lynchings could continue. And we felt that based on that premise, that the logging of 2,000-year-old trees would continue unless the rest of the nation was watching. And so we, as always, tie our issues together. We feel all the issues are connected, and we created Redwood Summer 1990. And during that campaign, at the beginning of it, Judy Berry and I were car bombed in the process of organizing for in Oakland, California. On May 24th, 1990, we were arrested by the FBI and Oakland police for bombing ourselves, a false arrest. And Judy lived, I lived. She died later of cancer after living through the bombing. But we sued the FBI and Oakland police and were awarded $4.4 million by an actual jury that when we went to trial in 2002. So that said, those 2 successful campaigns, we've been, and myself personally, been involved in saving tens of thousands of acres of wilderness. I've been involved in electoral politics. I ran for Congress in 1988 as a Democrat. We were up against the Timber Democrat. We were all something before we were a Green, and we had really a fascist timber conservative Democrat, pro-death squad, pro-offshore oil drilling, you name it. He was on the wrong side of every issue. And so I took him on to the primary and ran a musical campaign. And in fact, when Judy and I were car bombed, we were on our way to perform. Judy played the fiddle. I wrote songs. We both wrote songs, and we played. And so perhaps on that note, so to speak, I will open with a song that I wrote in 1990. And in I'm sorry, did I say 1990? I mean, I wrote the song in the year 2000 during the Bush-Gore campaign. And you might say this is a little bit of my own life imitating my own art, because here I am doing the very thing that I said I would do. Now you know that this here country has been going to hell for quite some time. We got a record unemployment and crazy corporate crime. Those folks out there in Washington, they haven't got a clue. But ever since I was a little kid, they said there's one thing you can do. I'm gonna run for president. I know this job was heaven sent. I'm gonna wear a great big smile, run the country for a little while, have my hands right there and all the tools, have a chance at changing all the rules. Brush my teeth each night with Pepsodent. I'm gonna run for president. And now you know I love this country, but you know it don't seem right when we got snipers and measles warnings and folks going hungry each night. The air is all polluted, the water ain't fit to drink. We're on the verge of World War III, so I just started to think, I'm gonna run for president. I know this job was heaven sent. I'm gonna wear a great big smile, run the country for a little while, have my hands right there and all the tools, have a chance of changing all the rules. Elect someone who's competent. I'm gonna run for president. So let's have universal health care and a job for everyone. We'll clean up the environment. The schools will all be fun. We're gonna need new leaders, but we'll respect our elders too. The world will live in global peace, and I will promise you, I'm gonna run for president. I know this job was heaven sent. I'm gonna wear a great big smile, run the country for a little while, have my hands right there and all the tools, have a chance to change it all the rules. You can hold this truth self-evident. I'm gonna run for president. Let me manage how your money's spent. I'm gonna run for president. Bum 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 bum. Go Greens!
Yay! Thank you for that. That's a pretty platform-packed song you got there.
I try to pack it in when I write. I've been writing topical songs really since I started writing at age 10. That's 50 years ago. And it's always been my intention to write about to write about the people and the things that are happening around me, whether it's the redwoods or the elections or even my friends.
Well, good. So I have a few questions for you. And, we do have people from around the country watching right now. You may not believe it, but we do. We've got some questions from a couple of different places outside of Colorado, but I'm going to ask you some kinds of things that are particular to Colorado and things that we're concerned about. We have a reputation of having a very environmentally friendly area, state that is. One of the problems that we're having right now is this issue of mineral rights and then eminent domain and where fracking gets inserted. We've actually had a couple of municipalities here in Colorado that did pass anti-fracking bans, um, only to be overruled and actually sued by the governor of Colorado because these petroleum or these energy companies have mineral rights, and they should, according to the Constitution, have access to those rights, whether you live over their rights or not. So, as president, fracking has come up in the Democratic debates as well. But as president, how would you handle the issue of fracking? And just tell us what your attitude would be.
Well, first of all, I ascribe to the notion that the environment has rights as well, that the animals have rights, the earth has rights. We are of the earth. We are part of earth. We are not separate from it. So the rights of human beings and the rights of the earth are intertwined together. That said, specifically on fracking, I would declare most, if not all, fracking sites EPA emergency cleanup sites. I'm sorry, I spaced out the right, Superfund sites. That's the word I was looking for. And we need to clean up these sites right away. They are obviously polluting the water. And this gets a classic example of how the destruction of the environment impinges on people's rights, on people's civil rights, on people's rights to basically live and to drink water. Our water situation, both in the United States and internationally, is a matter of emergency. We can't live without water. We can't live without air. These have to be, inherent rights, the right to live. And so we have to ban fracking immediately. It really is a matter of national security. And further, we need to be off of fossil fuels. We have a fossil fuel habit that we need to kick. And my position on my platform is that we need to ban fossil fuels yesterday. And now, of course, we'll keep some for emergency services, but you ban fossil fuels, you'll see an immediate startup of all kinds of new industries. Solar, I've lived off solar power for decades, and all my neighbors live off of solar power, and we don't even live in the Sun Belt. So solar energy, which can be local to your own house, you can produce your own solar and run your washing machine and your refrigerator and your TV all at once and never have to pay another PG&E bill again, or whoever your electrical company is. That's who we have in California, of course. And so we just have to get rid of fossil fuels. Now, some people might say, well, it's unrealistic to ban fossil fuels, and I would maintain it is unrealistic to maintain burning fossil fuels and expect us to live on this planet with the ice caps melting, with the climate radically changing. It's basically like we're living in a giant garage, which we call the atmosphere, and it's a closed system, and we've turned on the keys to our car, we've shut the garage door, and now we're sucking in the exhaust fumes, and we're expecting that the obvious is not going to happen. We are committing global suicide. Fracking has to end. Fossil fuel burning needs to end. And as president, I will do all I can through my executive abilities to sic the EPA on all of these sites and make them clean them up and stop doing the pollution in the first place.
Great. Do you see any holes right now as far as EPA regulations go that the office of the president could maybe tighten up or enforce in a different way? What do you think?
It's offline right now, but later on you'll see something called Darryl's 20 Rules of Activism. And one of the 20 rules is the laws are only as strong as the people who enforce them. And we all know, of course, laws are selectively enforced. We see that in the criminal justice system, obviously, not just selectively enforced, but the degree to which they enforce, the length of sentencing, all these kind of things. And but back to your original question, we have the Clean Water Act, we have the Clean Air Act, we have so many more good environmental policies that are in the Endangered Species Act, that are just not obeyed. We have the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. We have private property rights, which fracking is violating all over the place. So it's not as if we necessarily have to have more laws in the books. We just need to have the willpower to enforce them. As president, You select your attorney general, and you are, in fact, the attorney general's boss. And I will order the attorney general to do a number of things, including looking into criminal charges at places like Flint, Michigan, at places like the Navajo reservations, where they're, and the Hopi reservations, where they are just sending nuclear waste down the river. The point, and not to mention other toxic chemicals. So this is a pervasive problem. It's all over the United States, not just the place I mentioned. So the thing to do is to enforce the laws we have, and then if there are holes, we can fill those.
Right, and that seems to be kind of frustrating. That I think a lot of people that are on the left and consider themselves progressive, they do tend to get a little frustrated about what seems to be kind of like a lax response, and it's it with the EPA, with FDA, with the Justice Department, and so that's actually a very even if you just swiftly enforce what's already in place, that might actually be quite a solution. Kind of on this same topic, though, regarding to the environment, we have a couple of questions from our friend Mark in Oklahoma. Go Okies! And one question that he has in particular is, what ideas do you have to promote clean power versus petroleum, nukes, etc., and within your capacity as in the office of president?
Well, none of these ideas, or most of these ideas, are not new. We have to stop the tax breaks. We need to stop the subsidization of these industries. I mean, the Superfund site cleanups is, in fact, a subsidy of those industries. We need to prosecute more and we need to enforce the laws we have. That I've already said. But the basic premise of my platform is that all the issues are connected, and my motto, the theme of my campaign, is the future is in our hearts. And no matter how many laws we pass, they will not be enforced unless we understand, as they say in Stranger in a Strange Land, unless we grok the concept that we are killing ourselves, unless we feel the death machine enclosing. Even the rich are going to be killed by what's happening. In my platform, it says the poor will die first, but the rich will die tomorrow. I don't know anybody who would want to live in a world where so many people are killed by pollution. What will be left? A little mountaintop retreat with an oasis? No, that is not a world I think anybody wants to live in. I would hope not. So the first order of business is to get people to, leading by example, to understand that we are killing ourselves. And a lot of people, there's a whole actually fundamentalist way of thinking. I haven't just watched a whole film about it called Waiting for Armageddon, but I came up with this notion all by myself back in 1988, wrote a song about it called You Can't Clear Cut Your Way to Heaven, in which people are actually deliberately destroying the earth, or allowing the earth to be deliberately destroyed, because they think they're going to be raptured up to heaven, and they're literally paving the way over for the second coming of Jesus. And so we have a problem in that there are people who are advocating in the United States for the destruction of the earth. And so we need to have a major consciousness shift. And that was right from the Reagan administration. James Watt and Ronald Reagan himself ascribed to these philosophies. So until we have a change of heart, which is why my motto is the future is in our hearts, there's no amount of laws we can pass that aren't going to clean up the environment. So to that end, leadership by example, solar power on the White House, solar power on all government buildings, solar power on military installations, which are of course government buildings. In other words, we start with the government, which creates a lot of jobs, and you can do that through executive order and executive mandate and direction. And then you lead by example. You create a thriving solar business that will start to supplant it. Other things I have on my platform, including putting a vegetable garden, not just one like Michelle Obama has, but one that turns into a food bank right out of the White House, as well as a seed bank. So we allow people to grow their own food. And I'm digressing, but the point is leadership by example. And the example the White House can set is huge, because we're in charge of the government.
Right, that is absolutely true. So one or two specific incentivization plans that you might have to actually encourage the use of this. So you're saying to lead by example. Any programs you might think of that you could actually use to incent switching?
Well, certainly. For example, if we are putting solar panels on government buildings, we are hiring. That is more than just an incentive. We are actually hiring people to put the solar panels on a massive scale on buildings. So that creates jobs. It bolsters industry. It allows the price of solar panels to come down and be made more affordable. We are showing people that it works. A lot of people don't realize, as I do from experience, that I can run my washer, dryer, radio, TV set, and refrigerator, although I do have a solar-friendly refrigerator, all at the same time. All at the same time. You can live without reducing any of the conveniences of your household on solar, plus have that seriously good feeling of not paying the utilities. So my point is, in terms of incentive, that by hiring that many solar contractors and that many solar projects, that is in and of itself an incentive and will allow the rest of the country to follow. I mean, we can have, you know, the whole states of Arizona, New Mexico, Texas go solar, which they should, because they got the sun, not to mention solar California, not to mention Southern California, solar California, and they would be the best suited for these kinds of things. But starting with government installations will be just as much of a boost, of a jumpstart, a big jumpstart and zipping down the road as anything else. And you make things popular, you know, you make things hip, you make things popular by doing. So that is my answer. Yes, we can certainly pass laws. I can propose laws that would create tax incentives. There have been different states. There was actually a government tax incentive for solar, which I believe was withdrawn at a certain point. I used to follow it quite closely not very long ago. And the solar stocks would go up and down based on how these incentives were doing. So yes, we can lead by example. We can create the tax incentives, but we can create subsidies for people to do this. Schools need to have this. So yes, we can do this by example. I think it would be just fine for starters.
Okay, great. And I want to shift gears a little bit. You know, one problem that's really not particular to Colorado, but certainly it's a flashpoint in our regional politics here, and that's the issue of the numbers of homeless people that have found themselves into our urban centers. In fact, Denver is one of the municipalities in this country where a camping ban has been instituted, where if you're sitting on a park bench and if you have anything on you that will give you shelter, like let's say a blanket, let's say a sleeping bag, you actually can be cited. You'll be asked to move along at least. And really, this is a localized issue. But what ideas do you have in terms of a federal response to homelessness and to, you know, really the economic situations that's coming forward that's really exacerbating it?
Absolutely. It's economic and it's also very much social as well. We have drug addiction. We have a mental health crisis. We have an economic crisis that's really at the top of the list. We have a social services crisis where the support systems are not there for people. So let me tell you, on my platform, you will find on the federal level, I propose a nationwide network of campgrounds that provide hot water, showers, toilets, a camp manager that's hopefully recruited from amongst the ranks of the people who are living there. We have to have the ability to shower, use the bathroom, have a cooking facility as a basic human right. And these campsites are all over the United States, whereas Denver may feel it's a local issue. I can assure you it is both a national issue, right? In tiny little Garberville, there are often 100 people on the streets in a town that only has 1,500 people in it. So the point is, this is a national problem. In fact, it's an international problem. We're seeing it everywhere. So my bottom line, before we even get into actual housing, is to allow people to pitch tents, to allow them to have a safety, to have rangers that provide a safety factor so that people aren't and feel safe in their campsites, that they're able to clean themselves and pitch a tent. Now that is a bare bones, that's a bottom line. So yes, I propose a nationwide series of, not a series, but a network of campsites. And where do we put them? We put them where they already are. The people who don't have homes already know the best places to camp. The woods outside here, the lots that are abandoned over here, or even the buildings that have been abandoned in neighborhoods that nobody's sadly not using anymore. And those resources that have been gone into putting those buildings, the lumber, the labor, the chemicals that went into, and the wires that went into putting in those buildings should not go to waste. It is a reusing and recycling at its maximum potential. So my bottom line proposal is a nationwide network of campgrounds, and I'm talking about thousands and thousands of campgrounds. It should be a law, and I would propose a law, but I would definitely look into whatever I could do on the executive level. People need to understand the president's ability to do things is limited by both executive privilege and also by the will of Congress. But I would do my best to make it a requirement that all places all over the United States, all municipalities, all counties, all government institutions have a official campsite for people without homes that provide hot showers, toilets, cooking facilities, and people that will be there stationed to provide safety for the people who live there.
So maybe campgrounds in the federal, the national parks?
No, I'm talking.
Okay.
I'm not excluding that. I'm talking about campgrounds in every town. So, for example, let's take Garberville, for example, tiny little Garberville in Humboldt County. If you head north out of town, you'll find, actually out of Redway, just north of Garberville, you'll find many of the homeless camped out along a stretch of road that belongs to the highway, belongs to Caltrans, the California Highway, the transportation branch of the government. And that's public land. It's Caltrans land. People are camped out there like crazy. That's a perfect spot. It's public land. It's people have chosen to live there. They have been living there for decades, actually. So that I'm talking about every nook and cranny of the country, not the national parks, which are remote. I'm talking about places in every single town, from Denver to the tiniest little town you can imagine, should have a place for people who can't afford homes or people who choose not to have homes to be able to pitch a tent and take a hot shower and cook some food and have a toilet. And that will benefit everybody, because we don't want to have people who can't clean themselves. We don't want to have people who are subject to criminal predators. We don't want to have people who want a job but can't clean up well enough to get one. We don't want to have that. I don't believe, as a nation, we want to have people who have the ability to get a head start in life. And so that's my bottom line, and that's how I would start. But now we can get into abandoned housing and start to talk. Hey, if you don't use your house in X number of years, it goes to house people who don't have houses. But let's start with that nationwide network of campsites, and as I said, in every nook and cranny of the country.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. We had another question from right here in Colorado, from our friend Sean Friend, our friend. Are you familiar with the current plank that's being proposed to update the GPUS platform regarding economic systems, the anti-capitalist plank?
I'm not super familiar. I have watched, the listservs in the GPUS, not to mention GP California, are rather daunting to follow. There's so much back and forth in between. But let me suggest to you what my economic platform would be, rather than for or against. Certainly, the basic notion of capitalism is anti the natural law. Natural law has an equal give and take. You give as much as you get. Now, there is a micro amount thrown in for entropy, but entropy takes, the deterioration, the using of energy takes place over billions of years. So basically, the give and take as far as our lifespans are concerned is quite equal. Capitalism believes in getting more than you give, and therefore there will be winners and there'll be a massive amount of losers. So the inherent nature of capitalism is counter to the natural world, is counter to a kind and humanitarian world. Now, my personal philosophy of economics is a multi-tiered system, a multi-layered system, not a multi-tiered system, I misspoke, but a multi-layered system. We should have barter. We should have small merchants being able to sell things. We can have corporations selling their things, but we can't have, and we should have socialism. We should have a world in which The government ensures that everybody has an equal opportunity, that we take care of the people who don't have enough in order to boost them up so that they can. The average person really does want to be a functioning member of society, and if they are too mentally ill or too drug addicted, then we need to have the social services to assist those people. And if we have more and more of those people, that is simply a essentially evidence of our failure as a nation. Our high incarceration rate is actually an example, almost a self-admission of an example of failure as a nation. People like to chant, we're number one. Well, we're number one in incarceration. That is saying we are the number one failure in the world. Now, I don't believe that we are or that we have to be that way, but what I'm saying is that I think we need to be allowed to do a whole different number of systems at the same time. So those of us that wish to be socialists can be socialists. Those that want to engage in barter can be barter. Myself, I believe in bioregionalism, that we make things and sell things as locally as possible. So we buy our food locally, so that we make our clothes and sell our clothes locally, and our pots and pans and all these kinds. There's so much we can make and sell locally. Right now, we pretty much get it all from third world countries. And to that end, may I also say we need to have a global living wage. That part of my economic system is not to have a national living wage, which we of course need to have, but rather that we need to have a global living wage in which we don't trade with other countries that don't pay their people a living wage. And if we stop trading with those countries, we'll stop importing stuff that's made at slave labor or no wage at all, whether it's labor in prison camps or, I've been to India. I've sat down and talked to many people who make $20 a month. $20 a month, that's less than $1 a day, and they're doing hard work. Just for example, I know a number of people out there have traveled. I took a 3-mile rickshaw ride in India. It cost 15 cents. 15 cents to be taken 3 miles by pedal by an old man. And so we cannot possibly compete if we make $15 an hour, but we're shipping all our jobs overseas. We can't do that. So I believe the notion of unions is that we are by nature international. So we need to have we need to take the international notion of the unions and mean it. We have to respect the workers overseas as well as respect the workers here. So that's just a small portion of my economic platform.
Great, thank you. We have a really interesting question that came in from our friend Timothy, which I think it really needs to be asked. And long story short, how do you plan to overcome the current culture that has polarized the U.S. government, and what would you do to inspire cooperation and really keep things moving forward?
Well, leadership by example, setting a tone in the White House is absolutely key. Judy Barry and I, the late great Judy Barry, I worked with her on saving the redwoods. She world-class shero. She was very, but she and I both, and one of the reasons we even got together was that we both understood the nature of reaching out to people who are not like us. And to that end, Judy, as a union organizer, as well as a radical environmentalist, earth firster, besides myself, we started organizing unions, especially Judy, in the timber industry. And Judy created an IWW, Industrial Workers of the World, the radical labor union, and signed up Georgia Pacific Mill Workers, Louisiana Pacific Mill Workers, Pacific Lumber Mill Workers into the IWW. Judy was a genius, by the way. She was actually an IQ genius, but she was also just by nature. She was a genius. She spoke the language of the people. And so one of the ways we need to reach out by not talking over people, by not getting people sucked up into our little internal feuds that we have on Facebook and on listservs, but we need to speak the language of commonality. We need to reach for the highest common denominator. And if you don't think leadership by example makes a difference, well, let's look at Donald Trump. He is leading by example. Somebody recently wrote on Facebook, well, the White Aryan Nation and the KKK, I've studied them, I've worked on the issues regarding them, and they're not very well organized. And my response is, yeah, but Trump's organizing them. So we need to have a different kind of organizing. But the point is, yes, from the bully from the bully pulpit, forgive the expression, you can organize, and we can organize from a foundation of love, from a foundation of international solidarity. What do we have in common? We have to speak the common languages. We have children in common. We have love in common. We have water and air and food and education in common. The desire for jobs we have in common. Yes, we all want to live in a clean environment. And if the President of the United States and Vice President of the United States can lead by example through our words and our deeds, that can change the tone of the country as much as Donald Trump has changed the tone of the country in reverse. So it is leadership by example, and the way we speak, the language. You know, words like liberal and conservative, they mean nothing. Conservatives are liberal with the environment. Liberals are conservative with the resources. Right and left, well, right means strong and left means weak in many cases. If, you know, in general, why do we allocate terms which mean the opposite of each other? It takes two wings to fly. So there's so many ways in which we can change our language, the language that we speak. And if you don't think words are powerful, well, they certainly are very powerful. So we need to understand the nature of leadership through words. I mean, Dr. King's words, my goodness, you don't get more powerful than that, and he was a leader. So we start from there. We start by leading from the White House, whether it's a food bank out of the White House, hiring the local people without homes to work the garden in front of the White House. We start by example.
Great. So there's a personal responsibility aspect to the tone of the discourse in Washington, I guess.
It's not just, obviously we have to have corporate responsibility. More than anything, we need to have corporate responsibility. But I'm speaking as the president. I'm speaking not just as Darryl Cherney, but as President Darryl Cherney. That is a very different person. The president isn't just engaging in personal responsibility. They're engaging in personal responsibility from the largest possible venue you can imagine. So that's exponentially different than me telling you, well, Andrea, you have to do this and that. You have to not shop. You have to not shop there. No, we're talking about the president and the power of the federal purse, doing the shopping, doing the speaking, engaging in the rhetoric, bringing people together as opposed to ripping people apart. We need to understand everybody. We actually need to understand the people who repel us the most, but we also need to understand the people who we also engage in love the most. We need to understand everybody, because there is actually truth in what everybody says, but it has been completely distorted into a giant mosh pit. In fact, what has happened, yesterday I called Trump the punk candidate, the punk presidential candidate, because there is this tendency, and it really started with the punk movement, I think, in a lot of ways, although maybe before that, to name your band the most gross thing or the most radical thing possible, like the Dead Kennedys, for example. I'm friends with Jello Biafra, by the way, from the Dead Kennedys, but to name it the most horrifying thing you can imagine. Well, that's what Trump has done. He's engaging in a punk presidency by saying the most gross things possible and seeing what will fly. People actually like that. So I would maintain that we need to change that dynamic, because we need to change the people's higher selves rather than their lower selves, because all of ourselves exist at the same time. So yes, mine is a campaign of consciousness. And I'll tell you, the Police sang, Sting wrote, and the Police, sorry, sang, there is no political solution. We are spirits living in the material world. Well, there is a spiritual nature, and I'm not talking about religious. I'm talking about spiritual, our spirit, the human spirit. And this human spirit has a wide expanse of possibilities, and we need to and if you look at politics for the last 6,000 years on this planet, Roman Empire, Egyptian Empire before that, do you know that women were put to death in ancient Sumeria on the Tigris and Euphrates for adultery? We're talking about 4000 BC. As soon as we started to settle down, create cities, large governments, the first casualty was women, and the first casualty was justice. And so, and not to mention the land itself, and warfare began in earnest. And so we need to raise our consciousness about what we are doing to ourselves and our planet. And I'm sorry if that's a little bit broad and doesn't have the, I have mentioned specifics. that I will do as president. But we have to also see that if activism, which has been going on since then, hasn't gotten us further, and we are really, with the climate changing and the ice caps melting and the hurricanes raging and everything else, the tornadoes and you name it, and the wars and the toxic and the nuclear, that we are at the end of our rope. So we need to wake up. And one way to wake up is to have a president who can inspire, speak to people's highest selves. So I would say to you that is as important as policies that we create.
Well, great. We've got just a couple of minutes left. One of the questions that we had was for you to, briefly paint your vision for this country and how you see things playing out within the 5 years after you would be elected. So, yeah, as our last question, and just kind of like in bullet point format, what's your vision for this country for the next 5 years?
I think that's the best question I've been asked in the year I've been doing this. My vision for the country is we have a very quick phase out of the use of fossil fuels. We see new factories springing up, engaging solar and wind power and other alternative energies that are clean energy, including passive solar, new construction being developed, old houses being renovated, both for first-time homeowners, or just first-time homeowners, any homeowners, and as well as the houseless. We see people moving into these abandoned housing. I've been to Detroit many times, by the way. I've seen what the worst can be in this country. And I see us living in a world where environmental restoration is the new workforce in so many ways. In my platform, it says if there's 7 billion people on the planet, there are 7 billion jobs cleaning this mess up. So I see a whole new industry in environmental cleanup. I see housing codes where you're not allowed to have a garden done away with, so that people have gardens in their front yard, because that's where they're eating from. That's the best food. It's the cheapest food. And in some ways, we want to make sure it's not the only food, but it might be the only food if we don't get our act together. We see schools where trades are taught at a very early age, that people are taught languages, not just 2 languages, Spanish and English, but Spanish, English, Chinese, Russian, French, you name it, Swahili, Arabic. We need to see languages spoken. The whole one language in the United States thing is so funny, because children, starting maybe age 2 or 3, who are taught multiple languages wind up being smarter, more perceptive, and more competitive in our global workforce. So I see a world in which our schools teach carpentry and auto mechanics and languages and other, a whole array of trades right out of kindergarten. And I see a world where we are happier, and we have hope for the future, where we see our problems with climate change and destruction of the environment, and we go to those places specifically and get shovels in our hands, maybe even some bulldozers, and start cleaning up the messes we've made. We have a lot of work in front of us, and so I see a little hive of cleanup where everybody's working, but everybody understands, just like when you've got a flood coming in and the rich man and the convict are working side by side, pitching sandbags on the banks of the levee, that we're all working together to clean up this mess. And a world where, when the Beatles sang all this love, well, they were right, where we all begin to love each other and love each other for our differences, see that we're different, and love each other for our differences rather than the opposite.
Great. Well, that's a really soaring vision. It's a really lovely vision, and certainly the way that we treat each other is always going to, take a first seat in the way that we move forward. So, Darryl, thank you very much for spending some time with us. I know that you've been traveling and, taking time to talk to the folks in Colorado is greatly appreciated. Just want to let everyone else know that our website is coloradogreenparty.org. And we will post some things there, but you can also follow us on YouTube. And if you search on YouTube for Colorado Green Party, you will be able to find the list of all of these videos. We've got another one of the candidates coming up next here in the next few minutes. But Darryl, thank you again so much, and Colorado wishes you the best of luck in this campaign.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful opportunity to provide all of us. And I look forward to coming to Colorado.
Great. Well, thanks
Good
very
luck.
much. And everyone else, have a great day. Bye bye now.
Blessings.